You want to talk about a neighborhood drama that's part soap opera, part legal thriller? Yeah, this one's got it all. Picture this. My wife, Jessica, just tying her shoes on our front lawn on a normal Monday morning. Suddenly, two police officers show up, hands hovering near their holsters, eyes locked on her like she just robbed a bank. Jessica's just calm, old hoodie, joggers, and her legally holstered sidearm hanging on her hip. One cop starts twitching, the others on the radio, whispering, suspect armed, female, possible threat, neighborhood complaint. Then they see her badge clipped at her waist. Jessica's the new police chief. Suddenly, the whole scene flips. Those officers jump back like they saw a ghost, stammering, "Chief, Jessica Bennett? Oh my God." Across the street, with a smirk that could curdle milk, stands Karen Miller, our HOA president, clutching her tiny yappy dog and phone like she's broadcasting live play-by-play. She's the one who called 911, claiming some armed woman was threatening the neighborhood. What Karen didn't know: Jessica wasn't just any woman with a gun. She was the chief of police, and Karen had just committed a felony by filing a false report. This mess didn't start that morning. No, Karen's been waging her own personal war on our street for months, ever since she won HOA president, third term, by the way, after a suspiciously low voter turnout and a barbecue bribe or two. She's been doling out fines like Halloween candy. $25 for grass a little too tall, $50 for kids' sidewalk chalk, $100 for holiday lights still up past January 1st. But her new obsession? A made-up rule against visible firearms. It makes people uncomfortable, she claimed, even though we live in a state where open carry is legal, and Jessica's presence actually made folks feel safer, especially after those burglaries last fall. Karen didn't care. It wasn't about safety. It was about control. 2 days before that infamous morning, Karen marched into our yard uninvited while Jessica was oiling her garden tools. Deadpan, she said, "You'll be fined $500 a day for carrying a weapon in public view." Jessica, cool as ever, explained she was off duty, within her rights, and that the HOA had zero legal authority over firearm visibility. Karen scoffed. "That's different for a cop. You're supposed to set an example, not look like you're ready for a gunfight." Jessica smiled. "I am setting an example, one that respects the law, not invents it." Karen left, promising, "I'll fix this." And boy, did she try. 2 days later, Jessica stepped outside with her holster on. Boom! Karen called 911. When officers arrived, they were rattled once they realized who Jessica was. One practically apologized mid-sentence. "Chief, we had no idea. Dispatch just said, armed woman." And the HOA president insisted it was urgent. Jessica nodded. "You did your job. Now I have to do mine." Karen stood there, confused. Her grand plan wasn't unfolding as a blockbuster. Jessica approached her calmly. "Karen, filing a false police report about an armed threat? That's serious. You put neighbors and officers at risk." Karen blinked. "I didn't know it was you. You weren't in uniform." "How was I supposed to know?" Jessica fired back. "Exactly. That's why you don't call armed threat alerts without verifying. You're going to answer for this." That evening, our doorbell rang. Not just one neighbor, but 6, bearing brownies, pie, soda, saying, "We saw it all. That woman's crazy. What can we do to help?" The support shocked Jessica. She never liked the spotlight, but the neighborhood saw her for what she really was: a protector with steel nerves and zero tolerance for bullies. Karen? Not done. Next day, she fired off a neighborhood newsletter accusing Jessica of threatening her with a weapon, saying Jessica's presence was divisive and hinting at abuse of power. Jessica stayed quiet publicly but called the city attorney, filed a formal complaint, harassment, misuse of HOA authority, and handed over the 911 call transcript plus bodycam footage. She wore off-duty now. Years of false accusations had taught her to document everything. Later that week, City Council held a closed-door meeting with Jessica. She laid out the harassment, the unofficial fines Karen had been tossing out like confetti, anonymous letters warning neighbors not to associate with certain people, all traced back to HOA mailers. Council members looked shocked. One said, "I thought HOA was about landscaping and block parties, not a dictatorship." Karen, meanwhile, was still strutting around, acting like she'd won. She hosted an emergency HOA meeting pushing a ban on visible weapons, citing her own 911 call as proof. But this time, residents pushed back. Greg, usually quiet, stood up. "You lied to the police about our neighbor who is the police chief. You endangered everyone. Lucky we're not voting you out tonight." Karen's face went red, but she kept pushing. Even her vice president started to back away, whispering in her ear mid-meeting. That was her first sign she was losing control. But Karen was nothing if not relentless. She dug deeper, made calls, tried to dig up dirt on Jessica, even contacted a local reporter. What she didn't know, the reporter's teenage son had once been saved by Jessica from a house fire. That call didn't go as planned. Through it all, Jessica stayed calm, professional, no grandstanding, just leading with strength and grace. But beneath that calm, I knew she was preparing for justice and a reckoning Karen couldn't see coming. After the false 911 call, the neighborhood buzzed like a hornet's nest. Karen's iron grip started slipping. People whispered openly about her abuse of power and false accusations. Not backing down, Karen fired off a glossy newsletter titled "Restoring Safety and Decency to Our Streets," painting herself as a scared civilian who barely escaped an armed stranger. Jessica, though unnamed, was affiliated with law enforcement, as if avoiding her name would make the lies less toxic. The newsletter hit every mailbox, even taped to doors. Karen signed it as HOA president, wearing the title like a crown. What Karen didn't expect? The city council and mayor's office got a copy, forwarded by a neighbor who wrote, "Is this what you let the HOA spend our dues on?" The timing couldn't have been worse. Jessica was scheduled to speak at the city's public safety meeting, department heads, journalists, state reps all in the room. Jessica didn't need theatrics. Calm and precise, she laid out the facts: 911 transcript, newsletter screenshots, legal rights as a citizen and officer. She exposed how Karen's actions endangered neighbors and abused emergency services. The room went silent when Jessica played Karen's panicked 911 call. The mayor finally asked, "You're saying this call was knowingly made against a law-abiding officer who lives here?" Jessica nodded. "More than that. She knew who I was and called anyway." This was control disguised as panic. The fallout was swift. The mayor ordered an internal review of HOA practices citywide. The city attorney dug into the legality of neighborhood enforcement policies. Even better, Daniel Wu, Karen's vice president, privately apologized to Jessica, admitting Karen had bullied the board for years and issued fines without votes. Daniel came forward, submitting a statement exposing Karen's one-woman power trip. Karen called a special HOA meeting to spin the story as a personal attack, claiming Jessica intimidated residents. But no one bought it. Mrs. Geller, a 35-year resident, stood up. "Jessica has helped this neighborhood more times than I can count. She stopped a drunk driver last year." Another resident waved the newsletter. "You want to talk safety? You lied to the police and slandered someone. That's reckless." Karen broke under pressure, laughed nervously, and invited a no-confidence vote. Result? 28 to remove her, 2 to keep her, 1 abstention. She stormed out, furious, but the story didn't end there. The next morning, Jessica got a call from Internal Affairs. The case took a turn. City Legal found multiple HOA enforcement records with Karen's personal signature on documents that should have had multiple board approvals. Heavy fines, property complaints, some escalating to civil court. The DA opened an investigation for fraud and abuse of power. Karen's public meltdown worsened. Rambling social media rants accusing Jessica of weaponizing the police, implying a witch hunt. But neighbors weren't buying it. Memes flooded the forums mocking Karen for calling 911 on the police chief. When Karen filed a complaint with the city's Public Integrity Board, They rejected it and forwarded it to ethics for potential abuse of public office. That a local reporter covering HOA tensions interviewed Jessica quietly. The story went viral when the HOA president tried to police the police chief. Karen tried to give her side, but bailed once asked for proof. At home, Jessica stayed composed, watching neighbors wave, drop off cookies, and thank you cards. She smiled quietly, ready not for revenge, but for reform. Soon, the HOA issued a public apology, suspended all fines under Karen, and launched a committee to rewrite the rules. The neighborhood breathed again. Karen vanished. House dark, car gone. Rumors swirled. But then, like a storm no one wanted, she returned with a lawsuit accusing Jessica of defamation and intimidation. The irony was thick. Jessica laughed, a tired, knowing laugh, and called her brother Evan, a civil attorney who was thrilled to dismantle the bogus claim. He crafted a response that made Karen regret ever hearing the word defamation. Meanwhile, HOA bylaws were rewritten, transparency portals launched, and even the old clubhouse enforcement room turned into a resource library. Some neighbors still clung to Karen, but Jessica ignored the noise, focusing on results. That Karen's final desperate moves included anonymous flyers. AC